Hello, Paul Shepard here. We have to explain what regenerative beekeeping is. If you're interested in this, it's quite a change from the normal conventional type of beekeeping. And we kind of want to figure out why we have to do that, why we have to change the way that we do beekeeping. Our relationship with our planet is broken. Our relationship with nature is completely broken. Since the Second World War, we have started using pesticides and fertilizers and a completely different type of agriculture, an agriculture system that is based on production. Push as hard as you can, get as much as you can. And this has happened in beekeeping as well. We find now that at least 1 million species are facing extinction. You've heard about the decimation of the Brazilian forests. You've heard about pesticides getting into groundwater. You've seen all the plowing that's being done for agriculture. Scientists even say that we only have 60 more harvests left because of the way in which we produce our food. It's something really worth thinking about. We are actually in the midst of, or it's said, and I strongly believe it because all the signs are there, but experts believe we are now in the midst of the 6th mass extinction. That means that the whole planet and everyone will be affected. And it's happening all around us. If we look carefully, we will see it. It's not so hard to see. The unsustainable use of land for agriculture, the use of water, the use of, the energy use, climate change. These are all factors that we've heard of and we've looked at. Currently, 40% of all land is being converted for food production. And the problem is not that it's just for food production, it's the way that we are doing it. We are destroying the environment around us as we create more space for food. And we are using chemically driven agriculture with, huge machinery to produce food as fast as we can, as much as we can. We are losing the quality of our food. We are increasing the quantity, but we are losing the quality of our food. And it's affecting all of us. It's also severely affecting the honeybees. They are losing, there's a loss of habitat. Not so much of the old growth forests with trees, with big cavities for the bees to nest in. Not so much diversity. They've cut a lot of trees down and replanted trees for forestry, for wood production, for pulp production. All the agriculture, a lot of the agricultural land long ago, what we used to have were hedgerows around every agricultural plot. Nowadays, they're taking out the hedgerows and they're plowing right up to the fence. They say, I heard this in California, they say that way they can control any invasive pests like moles and all that sort of stuff that come underground. So they cut right up to the fence. Pesticide use. This is a big thing. It's pesticide use not only in agriculture, but pesticide use inside the hive. They've done tests on wax that they've taken from beehives and found up to 100 different pesticides, agricultural pesticides, and also pesticides being used by beekeepers as being the primary pesticide in the hive, in the wax. And this is affecting the bees in a subtle ways and not so subtle ways. Climate change, we've all heard of that. We all know about what that is. I will discuss that and we'll have to prepare our bees for the changing climate that's ahead of us. And we're in it now. We have seen seasons change, and beekeepers really experience the changing climate a lot more than most other people, beekeepers and farmers, because crops depend on timing, and so do bees. And when things don't flower on time or flower out of season, it's all a big mess. Invasive pests. I am in France, and we have now the Asian hornet, which is causing havoc among the beehives. They feeding off the bees, they're feeding on the bees, keeping the bees penned in the hives. The bees can't fly around easily as they did before, and it's a problem. But there are things that we can do, and things that are changing. Diseases are on the increase because of the type of beekeeping that we do. You know, when you see all those hives together in a big area, that's just a recipe for disease spreading. A lot of beekeepers are treating their hives with all sorts of chemicals to keep away from American foul brood, a European foul brood, and various other diseases. Queen failure. Queens are failing because of the way that they're being produced. A queen long ago would last 3, 4, 5 years. Now, a queen barely lasts a year. And I mean, the breeders are just going, it's like a mill, you know, producing honeybee queens. In Hawaii, they produce huge amounts of queens for the Canadian market and the North American market. And these bees are just there to serve a certain period of time, and then they get weak and die. So there are huge losses that take place. Beekeeper error and management practices. This is what regenerative beekeeping is all about. And that is why we want to take a real good look at it and change a lot of the ways that we are doing stuff. Beekeepers are now losing, we have colony loss, which is an organization that was formed to monitor the loss of colonies. They do it in North America, Canada, and Europe. So far, I've read reports. This here report that's on this screen here is into the 2023. This would have been the 2022 to 23 winter. The losses, they were estimating around 37%. I've heard as 48% in the United States, 50 to 55% in Canada. Europe, not so much as US and Canada. We're not quite too sure why, but partly it is because of the number of colonies that the beekeepers keep. There are not as many large, intensive beekeeping operations in Europe as there are in the United States and Canada. These losses are unsustainable. And when you come into this group, you will start learning why this happens and what they're doing to solve these problems and how regenerative beekeeping can change that. What they don't mention a lot in the surviving colonies is like how much money they spent, how many queens they changed, how much chemicals they bought, how many visits they had to make to their hives, how many manipulations they had to do, taking frames out, putting frames in here. You know, they haven't mentioned the cost of it. So one of the biggest impact on honeybee health and survivability is the practices that beekeepers use. And basically there are two basic types of beekeeping. Well, there are more, but for the purposes of this slideshow, we're talking about conventional beekeeping, which also includes commercial beekeeping, And then we have, it's natural beekeeping, but it's not really natural that like a bee in a tree in a forest left alone is a natural hive. This is regenerative beekeeping using practices that are closer to the natural way that bees are kept. When you join the course and you join the group, you will learn all about these things. I'm just trying to change right. So what is regenerative beekeeping? Well, first of all, what is conventional commercial beekeeping? So in this type of beekeeping, they keep their swarm, they suppress swarming. You know, losing a swarm is losing bees and it's losing production. It's all based on one thing, production. They breed bees to produce high quantities of honey and breed big colonies. They suppress drones. Drones are the future of the bees. When you suppress drones, and they do many different techniques to not have so many drones, when you suppress drones, the bees lose opportunities to change their genetics, to learn to survive. Here again, these are things that will be explained in depth, especially in my online course if you're a new beekeeper. Chemical use to control pests and disease. I told you already that the chemicals are ending up in the wax in the hives. They're affecting the bees. Even so the synthetic chemicals that they were using, they've banned those because, well, they've stopped using some of those because what they're finding is that the varroa mites and the insects are getting developing a resistance to these chemicals. So now they're using more organic pesticides to control varroa mites. And these are like things like formic acid and oxalic acid. But these things do affect the bees. They affect the bees' grooming. They affect the young bees in the cells. And they have effects on the longevity of the bees. Also, we just touched on batch queen production, artificial insemination, using 1 or 2 drones just to produce enough semen to impregnate queens that are used in commercial queen breeding. So you're not getting the natural queen that she flies out of the hive and mates in the air with 17 to 20 drones. There are even records of up to 70 drones, right, that the queen mates with, as the bees try to juggle genetics to come up with the traits that they need to manage the stresses that they face on a constant basis. Importation of queens has been another big thing because then, so people say, oh, well, I hear that these Russian queens are good, so they're bringing in Russian queens, so they're bringing in Carniolan queens, they're bringing in buckfast queens, and what we have found is that the queens that are bred, that are produced naturally, right, by natural selection without any artificial input or any hybrid breeding of any kind, just a natural thing, seem to have a better, stronger ability to resist pests and disease. Feeding is also another big thing beekeepers take. Some beekeepers, especially in commercial honey production, they take all the honey and then they feed high fructose corn syrup or sugar solutions. You actually see them come with a tanker, with a hose, with a pump, filling up hives with high fructose corn syrup. And you know how this corn syrup is, where it comes from. It comes from corn, and it's probably not bio, it's, I've forgotten the word, it just slipped my mind. It's genetically modified. It's a GMO production. So all that is going into the hive and into the bees. Tightly packed apiaries. You see apiaries with sometimes over 1,000 hives in it. This is not how bees live in a normal way. And this transfers diseases and pests in a horizontal way and is not the best way for keeping bees. That has to change for us. Excuse me, if we want to change the way we keep our bees and the health of our bees. Excuse me. So regenerative beekeeping is pretty much the opposite of all what I just talked about. We don't use the wax foundation for setting in combs. We don't use imported queens. Only natural queens selected by the bees, queens from the area, within your area, within like a mile or 2 miles of your place, your micro environment. That's the best queens for you. No control of swarming or minimal control of swarming, maybe using time splits. That takes skill, that takes knowledge. Allowing for drone production, bees sometimes build up drones unbelievably in a hive. You open a hive and you think that you're just overpowered by drones, but it is their way of solving the problem. There's something that they are doing, and that's what we have to start thinking about is, why do they do what they do, and follow their lead. Alternative hive bodies such as top bar or log hives or skeps, all of these are things that but definitely insulated hives that are warm, where the bees stay warm all year, and they can maintain their environment. Not going into a hive and pulling up frames and taking bees and disrupting hives. This is one of the biggest damaging acts that beekeepers do, is that to constantly go into a hive and open it up and keep looking. Leaving honey, especially in dearth or in a time when there's no available nectar or winter. Keeping the hives separated up to 20 to 30 meters. I keep mine around 10. They seem to be okay with that. And definitely no chemicals, no treating whatsoever. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is a skill that you can learn. Look here at this picture. This is an interesting picture. This is a colony existing in a window in France. You can see the outer window, the shutters, and then there's a glass inner window. This guy here is Vincent Allboy. I hope I got that name right. He's an entomologist and a beekeeper here in France that is really into the bees and checking on the natural bees. Here we have a colony that has existed in this window of a farm for 25 years. The farmer says there has been consistent occupation of that cavity by bees. But we know it's not the same queen, but this hive would swarm every year and rebuild itself. What we're not seeing is that right behind his elbow of his hand that he's pointing at there, which he's using to point there, right behind his elbow is a nest of hornets, probably the European hornet, and they live in harmony somehow with the bees, and these hives, they expand in the spring and the summer, and they contract in the winter, and wax moth comes in and eats the wax that the bees are not taking care of. And then the hive expands again the next spring. It's a rhythm and it's a way, and that is the way that we want to follow. Everything is connected. All the plants with the roots and the mycelia in the soils, the earth, the air, everything is connected. And this is the principle that we work with natural beekeeping or regenerative beekeeping. People have been predicting these problems for years. Tobin Schiffer talks about that if we continue with modern beekeeping the way we are, the bees are going to decline. They're already declining. This statement was made many years ago. I have this over 5 years, I think. Rudolf Steiner, the biodynamic guy, he said 100 years ago that the bees would decline. And he was sure right. Here we are, because he spoke in 1923, he made that statement. And here we are in 2023, and that is what we are going through. The bees are declining. Most bees cannot survive on their own without treatment. Tom Seeley, this last paragraph here, if you take time to read it, Seeley talks about when he was in the States and Varroa had just hit and bees were being devastated everywhere. And they found that the only way to handle it was to treat it. But in this forest near the university where he works, Cornell University, he noticed that there were wild hives in the trees that had survived without treatment. And that on that basis, he started checking in to bees living on their own without treatment. He came up with his principle of Darwinian beekeeping, which is basically what we are talking about here in regenerative beekeeping. Bees have been around for millions of years. Now, this is a bee in amber that is in the Museum of Los Angeles, and I think it's tagged at 30 million years. That's a bee. But there are bees that are older. There's evidence of bees older than that, and families, the similar families of Apis going back even further than that. I don't want to go out and say it's like 80 million years, but think about it, even 30 million years of something evolving and it has managed to live. Why are we doing anything to change the way that they have managed themselves? The only thing that comes right in is because we want them to produce. We are bending them like we are bending nature to produce more, and that is what is causing the problem. Starting regenerative beekeeping is not a bed of roses. It's a difficult thing. I have been keeping bees since 1984 without treatments. I've lost quite a few bees. I'm an expert at losing bees, but I've also developed bees with resistance, developed bees that can withstand the pressures and the stresses and are better capable of going through the difficult periods, the droughts, the changing climates, the attack of pests and diseases. It's a huge, beautiful science. If you look into the inside of a hive and look into the way they call all the things that they do to maintain their colony. The propolis that coats the walls is part of their whole defensive system against both the pests and against disease. The long-range benefits of keeping your bees a regenerative beekeeping with natural management methods has long-range benefits. First couple of years, you lose some hives. From your survivors, you build up. From those survivors, you build up. And you use more swarms and what you call mutt bees, bees from around your area, bees that are acclimatized to your environment. This is the way to go. This is how you get over that hump. It is not easy, and you will also face a lot of criticism from people saying it can't be done. Bee schools don't normally teach natural beekeeping. They don't normally teach natural or regenerative beekeeping. Why? Because they would have a real problem. They'd be telling people, oh, you can do this, but people will start to see some failures. Don't expect all your bees to live the first time. You have to learn and change all the ways that you work with bees to get them to change. It's not just getting the right bees, it's keeping them in the right way. You know, and I go into a lot of this later on, and this is what, if you're interested and you want to stick around in this, you will learn this. I am in touch with a lot of people who do this, and I have hives here that I manage for 5 years now without treatment. I have put together a mentoring system. I will help you with this. If you become a member of this group, I will help you get through these tough points. This beginning part, it's learning it's actually unlearning, to be honest, because most of what you've been taught, it's going to help weaken your bees. Treatments, manipulations. You have to learn something. You have to learn a few things. You have to have a knowledge. You know, there's a lot of knowledge out there. There's a lot of books that you can read. So it's not, you know, you can jump, you know, like 10 years, the amount of learning you can get out of books. But if you have somebody mentoring you, and that is what I will do. That is what the purposes of this group is going to be. I offer 4 basic programs: a yearly membership, a monthly membership. There's a patron membership where a patron, you know, or it's a lifetime membership. And the funds from the patron help me help somebody for free, help support a new beekeeper somewhere in the world. We select that beekeeper and we will keep in touch with that beekeeper and see how they're going. And, you know, we write a story. We write a story together. And I have an online beekeepers beginning course that I worked on. I'm adding to it. And you get that with your membership, but you can also get the course by itself. What will you need? You need a computer or some sort of internet device where you can transfer pictures, because you'll be talking to me and sending me pictures and saying, well, this is what I'm noticing, and I can look at it. I've done this for quite a few people all over the world. I'm in France talking to people in St. Lucia, people in Trinidad, you know, and talking about their hives. Basically it's bees all over the world. You need the ability to connect with the internet so you can send these messages, ability to take digital pictures, a place to set up your hive. You need like a backyard or something. And I don't recommend that you start up Africanized bees in your backyard. Okay, if you have Africanized bees, they have to go far from your house. They can be dangerous. And what you need is a good area. You don't want an area where they're plowing and planting GMO corn right behind your back and spraying it with chemicals. You won't survive. Your bees won't survive that situation. So, you know, but what you need is around, like pasture, flowers. I even have some of my clients live in a town, and those bees I have found are doing better than the ones outside in the countryside. So that's very interesting. Join our group, you know, have a look at everything on this page. There's a button down below, way down below, that says categories and pricing information that will give you a better idea of what we offer and how it's offered.